Hi, everyone. Welcome to the International Water Resources Association webinar for the China chapter, China's Water Resource Management in the New Age. So we are really happy to have you here with us today, and we are going to start in just 1 or 2 minutes. So if you have any last-minute things you want to do, take care of getting some water or a coffee or whatever is appropriate for the hour of day that you're in, then go ahead and take care of that, and we'll be starting in just 1 or 2 minutes. Really appreciate you joining us today. Okay, I think we've given everyone enough time to get everything. Anyone who's running late has shown up. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the International Water Resources Association webinar for our China chapter. This is called China's Water Resource Management in the New Age. We're really excited to have everyone with us here today. I think this is going to be a really exciting webinar, especially because we have so many representatives from our China chapter speaking from their experience and from their depth of knowledge and research. So we're really excited to hear their perspectives and to engage them today. Our panelists today include Mrs. Ting Ying, the General Institute of Hydropower and Water Resource Planning and Design, Rabina Osti, Senior Water Resource Specialist at the ADB, David Tinkner, Chief Freshwater Advisor for the WWF, Mr. Wang Ding from the General Institute of Hydropower and Water Resource Planning and Design, Yi Ling from the same General Institute of Hydropower, Water Resource Planning and Design, and Jiao Shoufeng from the Institute of Geographic Science and Natural Resource Research. So as you probably know, this is a webinar hosted by the International Water Resources Association. The IWRA is an international network of researchers and practitioners who work on a multidisciplinary range of water resource issues. We are a nonprofit, non-governmental educational organization, and the IWRA provides a global knowledge-based forum for bridging disciplines and geographies by connecting professionals, students, individuals, corporations, and institutions who are concerned about the sustainable use of the world's water resources. Just like today, we're bringing all of our China chapter right here to you. And so this is a really great example of how we're able to connect people from all around. And we're really happy to have you here today. So we have a really great panel of these practitioners and researchers, people who have been active in the field for many years, and we're so delighted to have all of our representatives from the China chapter who are going to be able to talk to you today about the issues, the range of issues that are facing China's water resources, both today and how they'll be addressed in the future. So, as many of you know, this is a webinar, obviously, from one of our chapters, our regional chapters, and we have many regional chapters which organize events and network within their geographic region. So we have chapters in China, India, Japan, Oceania, and Mexico. If you live in one of those areas and you want to join, go to our website, www.iwra.org, to learn more. And if you are not in one of those areas, but this sounds like a really great idea, then you should contact us and we'll get you in touch and see about maybe setting up a regional chapter in where you live. We would like to also continue the discussion that we have. And so if you want to go to our LinkedIn webpage after the event, you can go there and look us up and then continue the discussion, the debates, the issues that we're starting to talk to you about today. Many of you have tuned in before, but I'd just like to discuss the format of today's webinar. So what we'll do is we'll start with each of our panelists giving a short presentation, and at the end we'll have time for questions from the audience. So if you have a question that you want to ask either a single panelist or a group, please go ahead and send that in to us. You'll see there on your GoTo webinar control panel questions is about halfway down. If you click that and type your question, I'll see it. What I do like to ask is if you try to keep your question broad and interesting for the whole audience. If you have a small detailed question about, say, like the fifth slide from someone's presentation, a statistic or something, for example, go ahead and reach out to the speaker. They're all very friendly people, and I'm sure they'd really, really happy to respond to you if you have a small detailed question like that. So and we'll do all your questions at the end, but if you have a question that comes up midway through, go ahead and send it in, and you'll be first on the list. So that's how we will be organized today. And with that in mind, I would like to turn the floor over right away to Li Yang for innovative water resource management and green development in China.
Hi everyone, can you see my screen?
Almost.
Good afternoon everyone. I'm very glad to be here on behalf of Professor Yuan to present my presentation.
We cannot see your screen yet. Can you, is there a button that you need to, do you see the box?
Yeah.
Here, let me.
No?
Let me send it again. Just no problem. Making you the presenter. Do you see it now?
Can you see my screen?
I don't see your screen yet. There we go. Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I will continue translating. So my contents will cover the impetus to innovative water resource management, the general approach and the major regulation practice nowadays in China. So you see, in China, sorry, the bar covers my screen. We have 7% of global amount of water to support 20% of global population. And the basic characteristics of China's water resources, one is the uneven distribution. Most are distributed in spring and summer, and most are also in the south of China. But this is mismatched with our productivities because now in China, most population and arable land and food production are located in the north. So we also have very fragile ecosystem and with high frequent disasters, both in drought and flood. And from this figure, we can see the drought and flood impact area and the pollution accidents increased in recent years. And this is the basic characteristics. If we see the increasing load in water resources, this is the increasing wastewater discharge from 1980 to 2011. We can see the increasing trend over there. After 2011, the total wastewater discharge decreased slightly, but the total amount is still very high. And if we look in the future for the water demand forecasting, this slide shows the increasing trend. On the other hand, we are facing the degraded aquatic ecosystem because of the development of water, soil, and mineral resources, and so on. The whole water circulation mechanism changed, and this induced the shrinkage of aquatic ecospace and also over development of water resources reduce the in-stream environmental flow. We can also see the significant impacts on natural runoff pattern and also the downstream habitats. The left figure is one big lake in Wuhan City in Hubei province. we can see there are sharp area decrease in recent years. So when we come back to water resource management, the basic development history can be divided into 4 phases. At the very beginning of the new China, first the water resource management focused on flood control and irrigation, and later with our open up policy, water supply become one important aspect. And then when go to later years, with rapid economic and social development, the water environment and ecological problems comes out, and the protection and the restoration to environment has become one important aspect of water resource management. And also our water demand management comes out instead of water supply management. After that, since 2011, our central government gave the #1 document on water sector, and from that on, our water management focus more on water saving and ecological civilization and water security. This is one important word nowadays in China, and is also one important component of national security now, and also the high quality development, including the green development, is very important in our water resource management nowadays. So green development is a big word here. So at the national 13th five-year plan, the keywords for the green development including the water saving, environment friendly, sustainable development, harmony, modernization, and the beautiful country construction, and so on. So facing the increasing load, facing our degraded ecosystem, and facing these new requirements, the general approach for our innovative water resource management, we will oriented at the coordinated development between water resources and among the water resources, socio-economic development, and the ecosystem health. And our policy targets will aim at water saving, spatial balance, and system governance. This will bring the development transition of our sector from engineering focus to more ecological focus, and from traditional way to more modernized way. And the whole system mechanism, the arrangement will change, in the final, change our human behavior, including optimize human behavior, adjust and correct wrong behavior. This will include, for example, for the decision maker, their decisions on the water resource development in water shortage area, and also the overuse for the local government for the overuse of water, or for the encroachment of river banks. Such kind of things can also be forbidden by our system mechanisms. Nowadays, in China, here listed some innovative, in our thinking, our China innovative practice in the water resource management. For the first is the strict water resource management. This was began in 2012, and focused on control waste of water use, and the control amount of pollution discharge in rivers. In general, this can be summarized in 3 red lines. One is red line for water development and utilization. Another is red line for water use efficiency, and the red line for water function pollution load. And another second mechanism we think is important and innovative is implementing the river and the lake chief system. There are 6 main missions on the system, including the water resource protection, water body and shoreline management, water pollution control, and water ecological restoration, and also the law enforcement. And now in China, for each rivers and the lakes, the local government is developing the dynamic profile and the management targets, also the implementation plan for each rivers and lakes to realize the complete, normalized, intelligent, and digitized river and lake management system. So now, for each river and lake already has its own chief, and in the coming period, the river chief system will focus on solving the illegal reclamation of lakes, encroachment of water bodies, illegal sand mining, and dumping garbage or illegal construction of buildings in river scopes, such as constant. For the water resources development, one important scheme in China is to carry out the river basin water allocation. This is the general approach. I don't want to go into details. And nowadays, since 2011, our Ministry of Water Resources has initiated 59 interprovincial rivers water allocation. Now, 33 has been approved by the country, and more interprovincial provinces are under consideration for water allocation. And to enforce the implement water allocation schemes, our ministry also issued the policy documents for this year. For about the tax and the recharge of water resources, the country started reform on this early in 1965. But at early times, the fee is very low, and in 2008, our country began to charge the water resource fee and consider that the water resources has their own values. And from in 2016, water tax reform pilot has been carried out in Hebei and later expanded to 9 provinces in 2017. And this will set higher tax rate for specific water use and for ground use, water use, and also for those overuse to promote the saving and cycle use. And this is a very important aspect of green development. For the ecological protection, our mechanism setting here is defining the aquatic ecosystem space and red line. At the water aspects, we have 5 categories of ecospace and red line, including the river beds, river and lakes, flood retention area, and river source protection area, drinking source protection zones, and so on. And this is one work together with the national work on the ecosystem space and red line defining process. And the water aspect will have to develop the overall layout of water sector development and also for our water infrastructure network. They are all combined together and coordinate with each other. And for water environment aspects, the most important mechanism here is we have the water function zone management in China. We have 2 levels of water function zone. The level 1 including the protection zone, reserve zone, development zone, and buffer zone. And the development zone is further divided into the level 1, level 2, 7 categories of subcategory water function zone of these panels. So within each water function zone, the pollution carry limitation system and the development intensity limitation system was implemented. So here I show some national codes and the national zonation and also some national measures issued by Ministry of Water Resources. So except the national water function zones, each province beyond the national zones has defined their own water function zones to complement a whole system. So this lay out the important basis for water resource management, utilization, and so on. The last one important mechanism system, I think, is the flood risk management. So since the very big flood in 1996, so our ministry summarized the water resource management strategy and practice and proposed that our flood control strategy transition into integrated flood management and into flood risk management. So in 2010, the national guideline for flood risk mapping, was released, and some pilots have been carried out. And from the 2016, at the national level, we have many places to carry out formally flood risk mapping. So in very recent time, that in October this year, our General Secretary Xi Jinping has important speeches on the natural disaster prevention and control, and he previously proposed the disaster risk investigation projects. This is the flood risk mapping is one important aspect of this. So this slide shows the basic categories of flood mapping, risk mapping. So this is my my presentation. Thank you.
Just taking myself off mute there. Wow, that was a really great presentation, and thank you so much for that. You know, what I really liked was the way that you were able to frame in the historical context and sort of give us the background that helped us understand the framework for how this all the water resource problems and issues and concerns in China can kind of operate. So I thought that was really useful and helpful. And sometimes people kind of forget to bring in the historical context, I think. So it's really important to be able to do that and to kind of engage that, so people know where these laws and know where these projects and plans are coming from. That's important. Thank you. Our next speaker is Rabina Ostri, who will be speaking on managing water resources for steady socio-economic growth.
Yes, I'm here.
Let me just share the screen or get your presentation up here.
Yeah. All right. So can I move ahead from now on?
Yep. Looks great.
Hi, everyone. This is Rabindra Ostri. I'm from Asian Development Bank. Asian Development Bank, ADB stands for Asian Development Bank. Anyway, ADB and the government of China, Ministry of Water Resources, conducted the water security assessment for the entire country during 2015 and 2016. So that followed the Asian Water Development Outlook developed framework and methodology. So this AWD, or Asian Water Development Outlook, has classified the water security in 5 key dimensions. One is the household, the other one is urban water, economic water, of course, the water-related disasters, and environmental water security. We use the same framework and methodology to conduct the water security assessment in China. So I will call PRC from now on. So please do not confuse on this. So just to give you a very brief outline on the water resources in PRC, and the previous speakers already touched upon this issue. For this, I think it's better to structure like this way. So entire mainland China can be divided into 6 different regions, as you can see in the upper right corner, and 10 different river basins, you can see in the lower right corner of the slide. So altogether in China, 2.8 trillion cubic meter of freshwater resources available. And as previous speaker mentioned, this is unevenly distributed over the China. Almost 80% of the precipitation falls in a rainy season, and the northern part is very dry, while the south is very wet. And if you link this 2.8 trillion cubic meter of freshwater availability, that will result in about 2,000 cubic meter per capita water availability. So which is among the lowest with other countries in the world. But interesting thing, I just pointed out the uneven distribution. So it's not the simple answer, uneven distribution of water. Even if you look at some of the river basins here on this slide, you can see Hai River. So in the middle of the slide, you can see the rainfall is in a decreasing trend, and the blue bar facing down. But against that, the surface water amount is reduced more than 35%, almost close to 40%, against the rainfall amount decreased just 3% or 4%. Further next to that, on the right side slide, you can see in some river basins, even Yellow River Basin, the rainfall trend shows the increasing trend of rainfall precipitation, but at the same time, decreasing trend of water resource, surface water availability, and even the groundwater is not that much. So of course, everyone knows the Yellow River, and that we have heard many stories, and there are many factors behind. We will quickly, briefly touch upon in my next slide. So what I'm saying here is the uneven distribution is not only the factor, but also there are many factors behind the curtain. So, out of these 2.8 trillion cubic meter of water resources, available water resources, China has so far used only 21%. That's very unfortunate. And then this 21% is contributed by basically the surface water, 81%. And even this 81% comes from the Yangtze River Basin, almost 30%. So if you convert this water used to per capita water use, that will result in below 450 cubic meter. So if you compare this amount with states, United States, which is 1,500, 1/3. And the another statement saying, they're proposed by the United Nations, below 500 cubic meter per capita water use is already the absolute water scarcity. So that's what happening in PRC, China. So as we discuss about the water use, you might have some kind of questions, or you may be wondering which sector or subsector is really consuming this amount of water. Basically, if you look at the trend of agriculture on the upper right, there is not really much big change. So even sometime the last few years, the water consumption by agriculture sector is slightly declining. But the other hand, on the left-hand side, you can see industrialization. Industrial sector has been always in the forefront to consume huge amount of water, and also the urban water. You can see in the next slide here. So basically these two prominent sectors dominate the water consumptions, urban water and the industry water. So far, China has done pretty much good job to meet the increasing demand of water, utilizing the surface or groundwater, as I gave you the statistics before, 21%. And there's still a long way to go to meet the increasing demand. So as you can see in this slide, and also the previous speaker mentioned on that, if we continue looking at this trend, by 2030 there will be about 100 billion cubic meter the gap, the demand. And the supply is definitely supply need to be increased by different ways. But you can see this is one of the results produced by the study. Of course, groundwater cannot feed that huge amount of water. Also, the other ways, there are no other ways, but only what China will rely on surface water. That's the context. But as you were saying, China will definitely use the surface water in coming years by 2030. But unfortunate thing, some of the river basin is, showing the declining trend of surface water, as I mentioned also earlier. So majority of rivers, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different river basins on the right-hand side of the graph shows the declining trend. And of course, there are different other factors behind this problem. Another issue is not just the quantity, but the quality is also the challenge. I think China is one of the highest or the top urbanizing country in the world. That result in the poor water quality because of the wastewater and the industrial wastewater. But having said that, China has done also pretty much good job. If you look at the graph, has improved, the water quality has improved quite a lot, but still long way to go. And that will definitely impact on the water supply and meeting the supply and demand in coming years. China is one of the most dynamic countries in terms of bringing policies and regulations to control, to meet, to address the emerging problems along with their economic development, right? But definitely sometimes it's a bit confusing, so many regulations, why and so on, but we can feel, the scale of the problem is there. And at the same time, government is trying its hard to address this problem. Means definitely there are so many regulations. Sometimes it sounds like duplicating and overlapping, but for sure, China government is trying its best to address the problem through these good governance policies and regulations. What emerging? There are very giant, I can say, macro strategies and even regional strategies and policies, and even the national level and the local level policies that will positively or negatively impact this supply and demand problem or the context. So the first, you can see in the macro level, as previous speaker also mentioned, the 13th five-year plan, which will do the massive improvement in different sectors, and that will definitely rely on the water, right? So water pollution prevention control plan has just been released a few years, from targeting 2016 to 2025. National urbanization plan is there, 2014-2020, and also the environmental plan for Yangtze River Basin or so. They are there. So they will be interacting with available water resources from now on. The second is the regional context. You might have heard this One Belt, One Road or Silk Road, and even the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region. And you might have also heard the south to north water diversion projects, which carry water all the way from south to north using 1,500 even to more kilometers wide canal. That shows the Chinese government commitment to address these problems. And Yangtze River Economic Belt comes together. And even if you look at the national policies and then the localized policies, you might have heard the water red lines, ecological red line policies, rural vitalization. That was the hot topics right now. The spawn city concept, river chip system, and institutional reform, which is ongoing. So these will definitely impact on the water resources. So let me come to the main slide here as we discuss the water security assessment, which we followed the approach and methodology developed by ADB in the past. We apply this here with minor changes here, on the key dimensions, but what we got is overall water security in China is basically safe at this moment. But if you go closer to some of these dimensions, for instance, the environmental water security is basically the water quality is one of the poor performers among these 5 key dimensions, right? So we have also done some kind of scenario analysis and projected how this water security context will evolve in the next coming years. You can see there are different scenarios: zero action scenario, low business as usual scenario, or a really very focused scenario, the high scenario. So if everything goes well, under the high scenario, I mean the most right corner, the purple graph, you see the China will meet almost, well, I cannot see the slide, which is just let me click here. So that will result 8.3, the index number. So from 5.8 now. So then it will compete with other developed countries by 2025 or by 2023, 30. So definitely, you know, there are many drivers, so which will interact, impact, or adversely, or sometimes positively impact this approach, or I mean the commitment or efforts in coming days. One of them definitely population, urbanization. I already talked about, you know, the rural development, energy consumptions, and several others. Climate change. They will definitely be there, always interacting with the efforts that government will put. Based on this study, we come up with eight different strategies. For example, high efficient water use. Even you can see in China, the agriculture, I mean, the irrigation efficiency is close to 50%. It's still a long way to go to improve. Non-revenue water is also the critical issue, though government is trying its best to come to the higher efficiency on this. Likewise, you know, the clean water is really the government's priority. Addressing point and non-point sources pollution is being prioritized, with different innovations ongoing there, including eco compensations and other things. Also, some economic, you know, financial tools are emerging to address this issue. I will not go through all one by one. It's just the quick highlight for you what we were doing. And then the last but not the least, this the modern water governance. And the governance is always the critical issues. China has went through the institutional reform. You might have heard different new ministries are now burned, and fortunate or unfortunate thing, I don't know, the water is still fragmented among these ministries. Fragmentation is not really a problem as long as there is a oversighting, overlooking authority. You know, unlike in energy security, there's a state council which is looking at this all issues. Ecological security is also looked after by state council, but so far water security has not yet been recognized, and that's one of our recommendation, to establish the you know, the water security leadership committee at the state council level. And also when you talk about the demand and supply, you know, this filling the gap, if you look at this issue, water challenge from only water angle, that's never going to be a never-ending story. So definitely the China government needs to promote the you know, integrated and multi-purpose projects or infrastructures in coming days. There are plenty of policies and linkages, you know, policies not necessarily only in water, but also in other sectors that really need to be integrated. Transparencies, you know, data, water use, you know, the stakeholder participations, they are always need to be improved in China for sure. And very innovative thing what China is doing is now bringing, also the previous speaker mentioned about, different economic instruments like block tariff, eco compensation, or even water market, water trading, discharge permit, and PPP, the private PPP models are also emerging in China. So these are the strategies we were recommending, but also what we are saying is the results from you know, this is what the different water security dimensions, each dimension were measured by different indicators, almost 20 indicators. These indicators can also be used to monitor the progress against these 8 different strategies in coming years. I think I have pretty much covered my part, and I stop hereby. Thank you so much. Scott, so I'm reverting. Hello. I've done my part. Please take over. Hello. I think he's offline, so maybe. But I believe my Chinese counterpart is listening to me, right? Yeah, you did it. Okay. So this means I delivered my presentation. That's it.
There we go.
Okay, good. He's there.
Yes, I am. And hopefully everyone else is too. There we go. Well, you know what they say. I'll just have to call my internet service provider, so it'll have to do. All right. Well, nothing's perfect. No, I really do appreciate that talk, and that was a really interesting presentation. I really liked for me, the projections you were able to do about, different scenarios, be able to break it down in that kind of quantitative analysis. I think, to be able to say, okay, like this, it's going to be like this. If we do a lot of action, if we do no action, if it's business as usual.
Yeah.
100% accurate, but it really gives people a way to say, this is these are the options we have. We're going to go right now to our next speaker, and just remind everyone that we have 10 minutes allocated for each speaker, so it'd be great if you could just try to get as close as we can. This is Zhao Shoufeng with the Water Energy Food Nexus in China. Jia, I'm making you the presenter. And taking you off mute. There you go. Now you're off mute.
Okay.
Excellent.
It's okay?
Yes. Just make your presentation full screen, as we discussed.
You should give me one camera. The number total is only 6 cameras can be open. Please give me one camera.
No, everything looks fine. I can see it. Just close that. There you go. Perfect. Now just make that full screen. Can
you see my window?
Yes, we see everything. We see everything.
Okay. So let me start. Thank you, Chairman. Also, hello everybody. It's my honor to give a presentation about water, energy, food nexus of China. This topic, I don't know what's your opinion. I think it's not a new one. Because the interaction between water, energy, and food, it's a factor. Whether you say it or not, it's already existed for many years. So the general economic theory of economics can deal with this interaction in theory. And for political planners, they also have considered this problem many years. So in 1990s, water, energy, food had been considered as 3 strategic resources for China. I think it's also for the world. So what's new for this topic? Consider, I think it's the interaction more clearly and prominently. And also to avoid a solution for one resource, increase the burden for another resource is the key care about. So the first topic, who will feed China? Perhaps you know, a very famous scholar called Lisa Brown wrote a very famous book, Who Will Feed China? It's in 1990s. And about 10 years later, in 2006, he published another paper. He said, water shortage of China will shake the world food security. But what's the factor? What's the real situation? I wrote a paper published in Water Journal, Water International, or International Water Resource Association Journal. Who will China's water shortage shake the world's food security? It's the change of agriculture water use of China, and this is the grain production of China. This is only for 10 years ago. Now we produce more than 600 billion tons grain and use about the same water. It means China we use less water to produce more grain. Also, this trend is still continue. Agriculture would use about the same, almost a little less than the top, and the grain much more. So we can say China can produce more grain with less water. Is one thing I wanted to stress on. The second point is will energy-based development dry up Yellow River? You said this is a report published by Greenpeace. They said the base development in the upper reach of Yellow River Basin will demand more than 10 billion cubic meter water, even more than 30 billion. So they said the whole water of the Yellow River will be dried up by the base energy base. According to this, I also published one paper where the energy industrial dries the water used for agriculture irrigation in the Yellow River Basin is published in the International Journal of Water Resource Development. Our conclusion is no more than water use increase of 3 billion cubic meter for energy base. It can be supplied by water saving of the agricultural water use, not so serious as the Greenpeace said. Another point is the energy consumption of water sector in China. We estimate the energy used for water supply, wastewater treatment, and water cycle infrastructure construction. The total is not too much. About 4% of the total energy consumption of China is for water sector. So you can say energy used for water cycle also is not too much. Another question is hydropower as a clean energy. And we visited the Upper Nanchang River several days ago. Here is Luozadu hydropower plants. I think is how to say, I was shocked by the advanced technology. The capacity is 583 how to say 58.2 million kilowatt, million cubic kilowatt. And how to say, please someone, sorry, is 5.82 million kilowatt the capacity, but the operation only need 2% for the operation. So compared to the former hydropower, always 1,000 people to take care of one plant. Now only 2% on duty is enough because of the optimization, even some intelligence technology. So it's very highly advanced. And also, I feel that the goodness is they pay very high attention to the green development. I mean they have a good green awareness. They constructed a wild plant conservation park, wild animal conservation park, also fish hatching station is around the plants, the hydropower plants. So they construct the protection area. They attach the fish. So I think it's very good for the green development of hydropower in China. So hydropower now is very advanced, also have the green awareness, but it still have some barriers for its development. One problem is the too high dam. Some dam is about 300 meters high. It's difficult to construct the fish corridor. Another problem is the waste of energy. They abandon a lot of water. It's equivalent to 80 billion kilowatt electricity. The main problem is have some contradiction between the hydropower company and the local government, and from the hydropower energy source area and the use area. So energy still cannot be used very efficiently. Sorry, somebody is calling me. I give a simple summary. I think this topic, water, energy, food legacy, is very complex. Only providing some perspective here. China has enough water for food, and China also can maintain food production at a safety level. It means we use much less water for green production. And the second is China has enough water for energy, but energy is a big challenge. And the energy demand of water sector is very small percentage, about 4%. And for hydropower, China is a big player, even with the meaning of green hydropower, but still have broad space for further improving. Thank you very much. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for that. That was a great presentation. Let me just take off your screen sharing there. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. I really appreciated that. And I really enjoyed being able to get a real perspective on the hydropower situation. I think that a lot of China's hydropower, every conversation I hear seems to kind of just immediately go back to Three Gorges Dam, but there's a lot more other opportunities and it's a much bigger process than that. So I enjoyed being able to get your kind of firsthand knowledge and to really see what your information was. That was helpful. Just mindful of time, we're going to go directly now to David Tinkner, who's going to be speaking of strategic water management in China.
Thanks, Scott. Can you confirm, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good, okay, and hopefully you can see these slides as well.
Yes, that looks perfect.
Good. I'll move straight on then. So the purpose of this presentation is to share some work that WWF has been undertaking, well, really over the last decade with colleagues in GIWP, some of whom we've already heard from today, in particular a team led by Professor Li Yuan. We've heard a lot about the water management challenges in China. I won't repeat that except to say that challenges like pollution and flood management, drought or water shortages, planning of infrastructure, ecosystem decline and biodiversity declines. I mean, these are the range of challenges that we see in China, and the nature of those challenges is probably as profound as pretty much any country on the planet. That said, of course, that these challenges are ones that we do see in other parts of the world. So if we can work with colleagues in GIWP to understand how best to address these challenges in China, potentially that's useful for WWF in its work on water resource management and river basin planning in various other parts of the world. And so really, through developing a relationship between our two organizations about 10 years ago, we've put in place a collaboration which is trying to do a couple of things. Firstly, to support review and revision of strategic water management frameworks, of technical codes, of river basin planning, of river chief training, specifically in China, but also to make suggestions of how other parts of the world can also improve management of water resources. And over the last 10 years, we've compiled a number of case studies. You can see on the map here some of the locations of case studies that we've drawn on. Case studies of where countries have grappled successfully or sometimes unsuccessfully with some relevant water management challenges. And really trying to sort of get under the skin of what has led to success or what has led to failure in some of those efforts, with a view to bringing that then to the Chinese situation and then extrapolating sort of global lessons from that as well. We've drawn on expert inputs. I think we've drawn on getting on for 40 or perhaps even 50 individual experts from around the world, some of whom have been from China, either within Professor Lee's team in GIWP, some of whom have been from WWF, but we've also brought in external experts who've been able to provide particular insights into some of these case studies or some of the issues. We've drawn extensively on published literature, both grey literature, but also academic literature. And we've held a long series now of very fruitful project meetings. And in fact, our next project meeting is due to happen in California in January. So I'm looking forward to seeing GIWP colleagues there. And through this, we've managed to develop a series of books which have really sort of set out some strategic water management guidelines and concepts, as well as some more technical suggestions for how water management can proceed. The first series of books was published in 2013, focusing on river basin planning, flood risk management, and water allocation planning. And then in 2016, we published 2 more books, one on drought risk management and one on river restoration. Now, I don't have time to go through the complete contents of each of these books. They're each of them individually substantial pieces of work. But just to give you a flavor of some of the thinking that's underpinned our work on strategic water management, I'll just delve initially into the river basin planning book and give you some highlights from that. We've heard a little bit about this already. China, like many countries, has been through a bit of an evolution in terms of its approach to river basin planning. So perhaps starting in the 1950s, when mitigating floods and other disasters was a big priority, through the decades, when perhaps exploiting water resources to enable rapid economic development became a priority. And then in the 1990s, picking up some of the ideas from integrated water resources management, and through to the current day, when really the approach has shifted again to try to focus more on sustainable development and really applying some of the key concepts underlying the ideas of ecological civilization. That evolution of river basin planning in China in some ways mirrors the evolution of water management and river basin planning we've seen in other parts of the world. This rather elegant diagram comes from the first book we published on river basin planning. And really it sets out the idea that throughout history, river basin planning has, very broadly speaking, been through sort of 3 phases. So early in human history, when pressures on water resources were pretty low, before industrialization perhaps, water resources management and river basin planning was largely uncoordinated. It was largely specific local efforts by local communities to harness waters for irrigation or to protect settlements from flood management or so on. And then probably sometime around the 1800s, initially in North America and Europe, and then subsequently in other parts of the world, really sort of large-scale engineering took hold, and river basin planning really became primarily about master planning for big infrastructure, for pouring concrete, if you like. Sometime around the second half of the 20th century, depending on where you are in the world, and in some places this process is still going on, I think river basin planners began to realize that perhaps all the good sites, all the feasible, most feasible sites for big infrastructure had been taken already. Perhaps constructing infrastructure began to become a little more expensive. Issues like pollution began to be bigger issues politically and socially and economically. And things like ecosystem declines began to be seen as being publicly unacceptable in many places. And so through a combination of these factors, softer approaches to water resources management based on sort of governance, on economic instruments, on institutional development, perhaps on ecosystem approaches, they began to take precedence over just infrastructure development. Of course, infrastructure still has a role in all of that. And so at least in some parts of the world, we've begun to enter an era of what we call strategic basin planning or strategic water management. Well, what does that look like? I mean, this diagram suggests that in our view, it needs to take quite a broad approach, particularly focusing initially on really trying to understand as broadly as possible what the issues are in river basin planning in your particular context, before focusing down onto some specific priority issues, which then lead to quite a specific set of objectives. And then there's a focusing out again through basin planning to try and understand a broad suite of interventions and measures that can be taken to try to implement a basin plan in order to try and achieve objectives. And by a broad suite, I mean a combination of infrastructure solutions and soft path solutions, institutional measures, and ecosystem management. Throughout all of this, it's important that efforts are outcome-led. In other words, we're not driven by some abstract processes, perhaps, that have been developed at the global level, but more outcomes that are specific to context, particularly in terms of social and economic development and environmental health. It's important to move beyond idealized concepts of comprehensive integration of all possible policy areas that are relevant to water, and more to think about a realistic approach, which is around targeted alignment of water resource management, with energy development, for example, or agricultural development where necessary. It's important to develop ideas of how ecosystems fit with this. I think in integrated water resource management, sometimes we see that ecosystems are seen almost as rival water users to social and economic purposes, or approaches to ecosystem health are focused on specific protected areas. And I think in a strategic approach, we have to think more in terms of how to ensure basin scale ecosystem health as an underpinning factor for socioeconomic outcomes. We've seen in previous paradigms for water resource management that the focus has really been on predict and provide, trying to use modeling or historical data to try to predict and then provide how much water resources will be needed, or protects people from certain levels of flood risk management. In a world that's increasingly complex, with increasing uncertainty about future water flows, really it's important to take more of a risk-based approach. And lastly, we need to move beyond ideas of single technical fixes, particular bits of infrastructure or kit, and start thinking about a broad range of approaches, which I've already discussed. These are some of the sort of underpinning concepts which have really sort of been a foundation for our approach. In all of the books, including in the River Basin Planning book, we've tried to distill from case studies, from our expert input, from our various discussions, a range of what we call golden rules, if you like, key underpinning principles. And these you see on the screen now are the golden rules for the Basin Planning book. Again, time prohibits me from going through all of these, but I pointed to a couple there which I think are particularly important if basin planning is to be sort of real world and relevant. The first is to accept that regardless of sort of all the nice diagrams that we include in the book and some of the tools you see through other publications and from other experts, all of which are useful, except that basin planning is inherently iterative and chaotic. It's not a neat linear process. There will always be a need to go back and revisit and adapt and learn and sort of figure your way through it as you're going. And the second one I wanted to point on is that it's really important that basin plans are developed with a focus on implementation right from the very start. I think the world is full of river basin plans which look nice on paper, but which seldom get implemented because they don't take sufficient account of real world issues. And so it's sometimes better to have a basin plan which doesn't look quite so good on paper, perhaps isn't quite so ambitious or idealistic, but which is much more implementable. In terms of what basin plans can look like, you can start with a comprehensive basin plan, which includes goals for protection and social and economic development and disaster risk and so on and so forth, and then move to thematic plans that might focus around flood risk management or water allocation or so on. But that may not be necessary in all contexts. Sometimes you might just need a water allocation plan or a flood risk management plan. You might not need anything quite as comprehensive. And then sometimes you might want to pick on a theme like river restoration, which actually cuts across a number of different themes. River restoration can be a tool for delivering on water quality management, for example, or for flood risk management. And so depending on your context and depending on your stage of development, you can pick and choose your sort of methodological approach to basin planning. Let me briefly talk about one of the other books as well, the book on river restoration. This is the ones that one of the ones that I think is particularly interesting. I wanted to show you this diagram. This is an example of the kind of strategic framework diagram that we include in all of the books, trying to set out a sort of a logical process, and we accept it will never be quite as neat as this in real life, but a logical process for really trying to understand how your system works, trying to understand the status of the system and the kind of the way in which the ecosystem, the physical attributes and biological attributes of the river system can contribute to social and economic development through ecosystem services, for example. And then using that understanding to set priorities and then to set a strategy and to develop a plan. And by asking ourselves these kinds of questions, we can guide ourselves to a more strategic approach to river restoration than perhaps we've seen in many parts of the world. I think there's an increasing richness of experience in river restoration, but much of it has been through ad hoc or small scale or perhaps slightly less strategic approaches. And through our work, we are suggesting ways in which river restoration can be much more of a strategic tool for achieving basin planning and for achieving broader water resource management objectives. That's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour. It's perhaps an advertisement. I'd encourage you to sort of go and look at the books and understand them in a little more depth. In terms of where we're going next, the collaboration continues. We're now working on 3 new books, which are, I think, particularly timely, considering some of the things we've heard about China's water management challenges. One of which is really looking at how water resource management can link to and inform and underpin spatial economic planning more broadly. This is an area that we don't see many people who have worked on in many parts of the world. We're also trying to distill some of the existing work around the world on groundwater, much of which is technically very robust, but try to sort of integrate it into this strategic water management and basin planning approach. And we're also trying to bring together some of the sort of emerging thinking on green water infrastructure to put together some guidelines on that. And on green water infrastructure, we're really talking about a combination of natural water infrastructure using wetlands or forests, for example, but also better, wiser approaches to built water infrastructure and combining those into what we call green water infrastructure. We're still working in those books, but watch this space. They should be published soon. And if you want to know more, you can access all the books for free and some of the papers we've published from this at that web address that you can see there, or you could drop me a line at that email address. I think that's everything. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you. That was a really great presentation, and I appreciated the way that you're able to, openly acknowledge the chaotic nature of the planning process. I think that sometimes, when we talk about how simple it is to implement these policies, and like you said, a lot of times basin-wide, it sounds very nice. You have it on paper, but when it comes to the actual implementation, it's pretty chaotic. Getting all the stakeholders, all the shareholders, everyone kind of lined up, and at the same time, being open to changing nature of things, climate change, for example. You can have a great plan, and then something disastrous or surprising happens, and everything's changed. So thanks. We're going to go right to our next presentation, China's Water Ecological Environmental Protection Strategies, from Zhaojing. No, I think Wang, Mr. Ding. Mr. Wang, I think is yours. And let me it looks like your audio's off. So let me give you a second. Looks like you're moving tables there to make a connection. So let's give you a second. And what we could do, let me see here. Maybe we could switch speakers. You want to switch speakers, and you, Lily, you can speak now, and then we can hear from Ding afterwards. Would that work? Lily, would that work for you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, good.
I can use the computer. My audio connection is loud.
Okay, no, that's no problem. What how can we? How is best for you to proceed? Can you give the presentation now?
Can you share the Teams the screen? I use her computer now.
Okay, with which screen do you want me to make the presenter?
The one with Yuan.
Where she's sitting right now?
I'm now sitting in front of her computer.
Okay, so you want it on. Do you want where she's sitting or where her computer is?
Sorry?
Do you want me to share the screen with where she is currently sitting, or where?
No,
the screen
where I am currently sitting.
Where you are currently sitting. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Done. Boom. That looks good.
So anybody can hear me?
Yeah, we can. Can you just open up the PowerPoint there, and you'll be.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
There you go. That looks good.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Ding Wang. I'm working with Dr. Zhao. I think he's traveling now, so I will give this presentation on behalf of him. So my topic is about water environment protection in China. First, I will show what the water environment or water resources in China is like. And then I will discuss the issues and challenges we are now having for water environment. And then I will give you some strategies and measures that we are carrying out to improve our water environment. In terms of the total amount of water resources in China, we have a large number, accounting for around 7% of the world's total. But the per capita value is low, less than 1/4 of the world's average. The water availability varies with time. For example, the rainfall, we have more frequently rainfall in spring and summer, accounting for around 3/4 of annual rainfall. But the rainfall for fall and winter seasons is rare. The rainfall is different in different years. In wet years, we can have around 2 to 6 times rainfall higher than dry years. The water availability is also different with in different regions. For example, in the North China, we have only around 22% of total water resources, but the agricultural production is way higher than this percentage. We also have more than 60% of terrestrial land in China is ecologically sensitive, and most of these regions are related to fragile aquatic ecosystems. So we can see this is the natural situation of water resources in China. It is complicated, and actually the situation is more complicated and worse because of human activities. For example, the aquatic ecosystems are grading in China. We have worse situation for soil erosion, surface water area, aquatic habitats, and flow regimes. And this is partially because of over-exploitation of water resources by humans, and also because of climate change. A lot of area lack vegetation, and this is the region and the reason and the result for degraded aquatic ecosystems. The top left figure shows some river basins in China, how the water can be used in these river basins. We can see that especially in the North China, there are some river basins using water even higher than their storage. And the bottom one showing the regions with water shortage issues. You can see the area is vast. And also the groundwater overexploitation is a common issue in a lot of regions. The forest coverage rate in China is also less than other selected countries. And there is a high percentage of land having severe soil erosion problem. And more than 50% of major river basins, especially in North China, have less runoff than before. And the largest freshwater lake in China, the Dongting Lake, is shrinking compared to historical data. Because of the intensive water use by humans, there's not enough water for ecosystems. This figure shows how much the percentage of runoff we need to give a river to maintain its ecosystems. And water pollution is also a big issue. We discharge a lot of pollutant in river, and so the water quality is worse and worse. Nowadays, there is a high percentage of water cannot be used for any purpose. Water management system is also needs to be improved. When we manage water system, we need to consider environmental protection more than before. And the water management system needs to be concise but more efficient. Because there are multiple agencies managing water systems in China, So we have to optimize their responsibilities. We also need to make the accountability clear for water-related actions. Based on these issues and challenges, we have some strategies and measures. The goal is to reach sustainable development between water environment and humans. So we need to improve the protection of areas related to aquatic ecosystems. We also need to conduct some projects to restore our water environment and to ensure the enough environmental flows to maintain the healthy environment in rivers and lakes. We also need to improve the water management system. For protecting water-related areas, we have a lot of work to do. For example, we can determine which area is important for aquatic ecosystems. And then we can protect these areas in different aspects. We can control the soil erosion in these areas, plant more vegetation, and we can control or prohibit human activities adverse to the environment in these areas. And for the new projects, we need to consider the carrying capacity. So we also need to restore the ecosystems related to rivers, lakes, and wetlands. We can convert some farmland back to lakes and wetlands. We can reconnect some surface water bodies. We also can rebuild aquatic biodiversity in these ecosystems. For environmental flows, it is first important to determine how much flow rate is enough to keep the ecosystem healthy. And after that, we need to meet the environmental flow requirements, maybe by operating water conservation facilities reasonably. We also can divert some water from other river basins to resolve the deficiency in a specific river basin. We also can control how much water can be used for human activities and increase the water use efficiency. We also need to consider environmental flows when we build new projects or renovate the current facilities. We need to collect flow rate data to ensure enough environmental flow can be met most of the time. And finally, we need to improve our water management system. We can establish a monitoring system to control the human activities and strengthen the water policy to increase the efficiency of water use. The regulation needs to be more, it needs to be enforced strictly, and the administration needs to be more efficient and flexible. And we need to encourage people to participate in water environment protection. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you. I'm done.
Yes. Let me change our presenter. We are running very low on time, but we're going to have time for everybody. So thank you very much for that presentation. I really appreciated it. I really, again, appreciate this focus on, to me, it's a very important and key issue about the trade-offs between human use and ecosystem use and being able to make management choices that both reflect a need to protect human use and important human priorities, such as the upcoming World Water Day theme on human right to water, but also be able to reflect the need to save water and to manage water for ecosystems as well. So thank you for that information. The last presentation comes from Lily Yu and talking about groundwater resource management in China. I am making you the panelist right now. And I think I've unmuted you.
Yeah. Oh. 可以看到吗? Hello? Okay.
That looks
Thanks,
good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You see my screen? Okay. Thanks, Mackenzie. Hello, everybody. I'm Lily, and I'm also from the General Institute of Water Resources and Hydropower Planning and Design. And today I'm going to talk something of groundwater management in China. I'm going to present three aspects. The first is some general information of amount and utilization of groundwater resources in China. And second is about some issues and problems we are having of groundwater. And the third is some main measures we are taking and enforcing. Well, the total amount of groundwater resources in China is about 820 billion cubic meters, which accounts for 30% of the total national water resources. And 82% of these groundwater resources are distributed in mountain regions, and we know these are the sources of the basic flow of streams. And in the plain region, the amount of groundwater resources in China is about 176 billion cubic meters, and 78 is in the north. And about the national number, about 50% of rainfall, about 50% of the groundwater recharge is from rainfall infiltration, and 36 is from the surface water infiltration. And we know China is a very big country, and the groundwater recharge and discharge regime is very different for different. We can see from this chart the recharge. I mean, this chart shows the recharge component of groundwater resources for the 10 main river basins. We can see for Songhua River, Liaohe River, and Haihe River, more than 50, almost 60% of groundwater is recharged from precipitation. But like for the river basin, the northwest rivers, because the rainfall is very little, and most of groundwater is recharged from surface water. And next about some utilization. Well, China started to use groundwater intensively since 1970s. And before that, groundwater is only used for some, by some small contributed wells and only for people's drinking and irrigation. Well, after 1970s, some big cities started to use groundwater, and the total amount of groundwater used has been increased dramatically. And since 2000, the groundwater use of the whole nation seems stable. Well, currently the groundwater use for the whole country is about 110 billion cubic meters. And almost 90, it's about 88% groundwater use is in the north, and the total groundwater use accounts for 18% of the national total water supply. And this chart shows the percentage of groundwater supply to the total water supply for the 10 main river basins. We can see for Haihe, Liaohe, Songhua River, accounts for more than 40 to the basin's total water supply, and for Haihe, the percentage is more than 60. And agriculture is the biggest consumer of groundwater, and the well irrigation area accounts for over 15% of the total irrigated farmland in China. And also, there are more than 400 cities out of more than 600 cities take groundwater as their main source of water supply. So we can see groundwater is very important for China. And the second part is about issues. Well, first issue is of overexploitation. According to a investigation which is done by 2014, the total overexploitation area than 10% of the total plain area in China. And the annual overexploitation amount is up to 16 billion cubic meters, and which accounts for 19% of the total extraction amount in plain area. And more than 90 groundwater overexploitation is in the north. And second issue is about quality. Well, according to the investigation and assessment of groundwater quality of the plain regions, there are groundwater overexploitation has caused some severe geological problems like the land subsidence, the seawater intrusion, and also the vegetation deterioration and even desertifications. And second is about groundwater pollution. Well, according to assessment, there are groundwater in more than 63 regions in the China's plain. The groundwater is classified as class 5 or class 4, which are not good for people's drinking. Well, some of the bad water quality is caused by the natural reasons, but 26 is caused by pollution. It's in fact impacted by human activities. And we can see the trend of groundwater pollution from single point to the whole region and from cities to rural areas. And the third issue is about weak management capacity. Well, the first is the system need to improve. At national level, we do not have a specific groundwater law yet. Current water law or the water pollution control law have some provisions about groundwater, but all these contents are too general and really hard to be implemented. And also some provinces has issued their own groundwater management regulations, but most provinces have not. And the second point of this capacity thing is lack of effective economic regulatory instruments, like the water pricing system is not perfect yet. Most farmers do not need to pay any water fee when they are using groundwater for irrigating their farmland. And the third point is the weak monitoring and metering system. Currently, the data system is not enough for supporting good management. Well, the third part is of the measures. Well, the first measure is to implement double control for abstract amount and water table for groundwater management. Well, currently, the total control amount of groundwater use for each river basin and each province has been issued and determined in the National Planning of Groundwater Utilization and Protection, and which has been issued by the ministry. And the provinces are trying to break down the amount of the province to each county and each city. And on the other hand, since groundwater table is a very good in the status of the groundwater system and which is very easy to be monitored. So simultaneously, we are trying to establish a groundwater table control system. And the second is to take comprehensive measures to rehabilitate, to restore groundwater overexploitation. Well, first is to enhance water saving, especially to use a more efficient way for irrigation that can reduce groundwater need. And second is use more surface water. This includes use more local surface water by constructing some water projects, and also include use diversion water. Like for the North China, we use the water we use the south to north diversion project and then replace the groundwater over siltation. And we can see obvious progress right now. And the third is to adjust agriculture plant structure, especially, for the groundwater over exploitation regions with deep confined groundwater used for irrigation. And there's no alternative water sources to meet their need. So the farmers need to adjust planting structure. Well, for example, in Hebei province, which is the province with severe problems of groundwater over exploitation, the farmers used to plant 2 seasons. They plant wheat in winter and then corn in summer, and we know wheat consumes a lot of water, and some part of the being stopped planting wheat and only plant corn in summer. This can reduce groundwater use dramatically. And third is enhance management supporting work. The first is improve groundwater management law and regulation system. Well, at the national level, we are drafting the groundwater management regulation, and so far it is completed but not issued yet. Well, in this regulation, the rules has been, some necessary rules has been clarified. It's including the rules for groundwater planning, the rules for controlling ground abstraction, and the rules for restore control groundwater over exploitation, and also for the and some others. And also at province level, the provinces, especially the province with groundwater issues, they are trying to issue their own groundwater management regulation. And second is to enhance groundwater management economic regulation mechanism, like to improve the water pricing system, and like for the overall exploitation region, we increase the groundwater fee, and to make people be likely to use more surface water than groundwater. Well, the third is to enhance management supporting work. The first is to enhance groundwater monitoring and monitoring risk, and second is to establishing groundwater management information. Because this is very important. Later, we do not know the what's going on. Well, we do not know the dynamic change for the groundwater system, and even some method cannot be implemented very effectively. Like we have already decided the amount of the control amount of the regions used, but if we do not have enough metering system, we do not know how much they have used. So that control method cannot be implemented very well. And about the publication system, we need to let the people know what is going on with groundwater and what we are trying to do, and to make the public people be likely to conserve and protect the groundwater. So that's all my speech. Thank you.
Well, that was outstanding, and I really appreciate that focus and how you're able to put that together. Now, we are a little bit short on time, everybody, and I do apologize for that. We have so many great presentations, and it's hard to squeeze everything into 10 minutes, which I'm sure you all appreciate the work that was done here. So I'm going to do just a few quick questions, if we can, And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just ask our panelists, anyone who has an answer to the question, if you can just jump on and answer the question when I put it out there. Again, we'll just try to do a few questions because we're already a little bit over time. So I apologize for that. And I'll remind everybody that all of our audience that you're welcome to contact our panelists directly and ask them questions. They're all very friendly. I'm sure they'll respond. And also that we're going to put the presentations on our website, www.iwra.org, as soon as possible. And we'll have a recording of the webinar on our website as well. So the first question comes from Lars Anderson, who is the China Resources Management EU China Water Platform. He says, in 2012, the IWRA introduced a water resources fee reflecting provincial water scarcity and the higher value of groundwater compared to surface water. But he's noticed that he has some information that provinces have internalized the fee. So could anyone talk about ways that, the status of what you might know about this and how this has changed the pricing of water, and perhaps also reflect people who have experience in how any different types of policies have been affecting the pricing of water that goes from raw water into urban water use? Does anyone have any feedback there?
Maybe I can give some short answers to the pricing of water. So in fact, the price of China of water is still not really reflect the cost of water. Only in the Beijing, Shanghai, and some big cities has a better water price, and in many places the water price is still very low. So for how to affecting the rural water into the urban water use in China, now we have one. Sorry, today I did not introduce that we have one mechanism, the water trade mechanism, that is to transfer water use from the rural agricultural rural use to urban industrial water use. This is already happened in several provinces in China. That is to the industrial sectors. Enterprises they pay some money to the local agricultural sector to pay money for them for the irrigation system, water saving system, construction, something like that, to pay for the for this kind of water transport process. And this is my question to this, my answer to this question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I think that was a good response, and I hope that answers the question. Maybe a next question that we have for our panelists is that a lot of people have, several different people have asked questions relating to and wanting to understand more about your opinions on the effectiveness of regulations. Can anyone speak about, regulations on the book are one thing, but how effective they are in actually achieving the outcome is another. So could anyone speak about monitoring processes, feedback processes, and the overall effectiveness of the policies and regulations that we've been discussing here today?
Well, okay. Well, about
go ahead.
Hello.
Yes.
About the regulation part, I just mentioned decided the amount of groundwater. This is under the water resources management system, which has been mentioned by Dr. Tian. And for the strategic water resources management system, we determine the total amount, the limitation for the water use by of each province and each river basins. And also, we are trying to improve our monitoring and metering system. And also, there are investigation and evaluation activity every year. So the ministry will organize some experts to evaluate the performance of each province and give their scores and to see whether they achieve the amount or not.
Okay.
I can add some.
Yes, please do.
So, for example, for the strictest water resources management, so this is one of the important management mechanism of MWR. So now the ministry carries out the performance review for every province every year since the issue of the policy at a provincial level, and this was done every year by our institute for each province, whether they get that performance standard will give the score of each province. And for next year, the water investment will based one consideration factor will based on the score of this performance review of the strict water resource management. This is exactly things here. Only one example.
Okay. Excellent. Does anyone else want to weigh in with their feedback, their thoughts? Okay. Well, I'm going to ask one last question here, and going that we're now pretty substantially over time. We'll just kind of wrap it up with this question. A number of, and this kind of is a synthesis of some other questions are being asked here, but a number of people are looking at thinking about the future, and I think that's a good way to wrap up. But thinking about the future and trying to frame it in what can happen in the next 10 or 20 years, a number of people like to kind of think about, how do you see regulations changing? How do you see regulations being adapted? How do you see different authorities trying to get buy-in from stakeholders, from other authorities that they need to work with, upstream, downstream? How do you see things happening in the next 10 or 15 years, regulation and policy-wise? Anyone can jump in.
Answer this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can do my imagination because now we know that there are institution reforms already almost finished up to now in China. This is a very big changes in China. So for the regulation changes, for one thing, the water sector is that the enforcement of the strength of the river basin commission. So at the present, it's the sub-unit of Ministry of Water Resources. But in the future, maybe now it is already part of Ministry of Environment and Ecology. Two ministries is in charge of the river basin commission. In the future, maybe the province, the big hydropower companies, all these kinds of stakeholders will be part of river basin commission. This is my imagination. Some documents will highlight and also give some kind of recommendation.
Okay, excellent. I'm just having a little trouble with the background noise there, but I think everyone heard everything. Did anyone else have any final wanting to weigh in on these questions? No? Okay, no, that's good. Excellent. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody on my panel for your presentations today and your participation and answering the questions. So thank you so much to Mrs. Ting Yang, Regina Osti, David Tinkner, Mr. Wang Ding, Lily Yu, and Zhao Shoufeng. Really appreciate all your help today. As you know, some of our panel and IWRA itself are all on Twitter. So go ahead and look us all up and follow them if you are interested. And if these presentations left you interested in learning more, please go to our LinkedIn webpage and you can continue to discuss and engage on these issues. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and all sorts of social media platforms. And I really hope that everyone in the audience here found the insights provided by our panel during this special event from our China chapter just as helpful as it was for me. It gives me some material to think about in these coming days, and it's going to help, I think, really drive a lot of creativity in all of our work. Everybody who's working in these areas of water resource management to kind of reflect on these issues about how you can apply these lessons that we discussed today in different contexts, and how you can kind of extract some of the key themes and test them out in your own work. So just to remind you again today that this is a webinar brought to you by the International Water Resources Association, and particularly from our China chapter. We have a number of chapters in China, India, Japan, Oceania, and Mexico. So if you want to join one of those regional chapters, please be in contact with them. And if you want to start your own regional chapter, well, please do that too. That'd be great. I'd love to have that. So you can find all that information on our website at www.ira.org. But over our 40 years of nonprofit, non-governmental, and educational work, we've really been able to bring together people from all different disciplines and all different geographies, and that's what's really important to us, so that we can help to be able to advance the sustainable use of the world's water. So we really appreciate everyone for tuning in today, and on behalf of the whole IWRA office, thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Bye.